that time again. We're on to our final speaker for the night, who calls himself a video artisan. I really like this title. He's interested in post-cinema, found footage, video art, mockumentary, hikikomori, and metafiction. But tonight he's going to narrow things down a little bit and talk about desktop movies and screencast narratives. Welcome, Albert Figurt. Hi. Let us know whenever you want to get started with your presentation.
That's okay. I'm ready. Oh. Thanks for the invitation. So I'm very happy to be here, whatever or wherever this place we consensually call here will happen to be tonight. This is a wonderful book on the topic, and that shiny thing at the center of the cover is not by chance a chair. And I'm also pleased by the fact that as speakers, we all share the same set of rules. So it's always stimulating to improvise at the intersection between jigsaw torture porn with the clock ticking and Lars von Trier eccentricity when it comes to audiovisual limitations. So surprisingly enough, for the next 4 minutes and 28 seconds, I'm going to talk to you about something quite resonant with those rules, something that, for lack of a better term or umbrella keyword, are provisionally classified as desktop narratives. See, there is just a short wiki page about this computer screen film, a bit constipated and counterintuitive, as you can see, with terminology shifting from desktop to computer to smartphone, so that in the end, the only scheme appears to be a laptop-based repurposing of the classical three theatrical unities: place, space, and time. So, number one, unity of place. The setting is supposed to be a single fixed screen, no external point of views. Graphical user interface with its files and folders is the new interior design, while system application and utilities are meant to locate the desktop somewhere in time and space. But of course, the user protagonist is probably going to go online, surfing, uploading, sharing, is going to interact with other user, texting, video chatting, social media, and there is also the possibility to incorporate external devices into the principal screen. And then you have number two, unity of time. So all the action is in real time. Events are captured in seamless long takes. No traditional editing, no jump cuts. Everything unfolds simultaneously deep down the frame. So post-production becomes live bricolage with the user split screening and window overlapping on the fly. But no worries, as in the computing routine, there's plenty of things to watch and filter, no clear distinction between online, offline, and cloud. Virtual activities immediately impact on real life and vice versa, so skimming, browsing, and clicking like hell. Number three, unity of sound. All the sounds originate from the computer, so no orchestral score, no professional microphones, no audio dubbing or mixing. In case, apart from the occasional background noise, you could hear the familiar finger step dance on the keyboard. But still, by now, everybody's addicted to streaming and multitasking, so music will constantly be there, as well as podcasts, playlists, or news report. And moreover, some user could even choose to specifically select the right soundtrack for the right moment. So, at this point, everything should be clear, right? We're talking about cinematic storytelling, but since it happens on a screen, it's more like post-cinematic. Actually, there's very little cinema involved. Or maybe it's a cyber documentary, but no, there is also the fictional element. Okay, so it's a mockumentary, it's a fake documentary presented as real. Maybe it's the next wave of found footage horror, except that this footage is not really found, like a tape, it's more like happening in front of our eyes. So who is watching here? Is it the screen sharing in the end? Okay, so for example, this is my personal list of desktop feature films. Some are completely shot within the screen, some are combining real-life footage with screencast clips. Some others are respecting the boundaries of the screen, but zooming on it, following the cursor, or mimicking the eye movement of the user. And you also have, especially on YouTube nowadays, video game playthrough, software tutorials, video essay on the history of cinema, reaction memes, and similar formats where a given monitor is either a canvas, a multimedia blackboard, or a funny trigger. So are these desktop narratives too? Well, technically, yes, although they feel more functional, lazy, or simply fleeting. So this trend appears to be stretched between the possibility of experimentation and the desire to properly customize the next entertaining product. Now, add to the mix the pandemic with all its related limitations. So the impossibility of physical proximity quickly turned into smart working, online learning, and digital events like this, to the point that we're already talking about Zoom fatigue or video meeting inferno. Now, if you think about it, on one side, desktop narratives have been, broadly speaking, already part of our media diet for a long time. That's basically what you normally do 6 to 10 hours a day, engaging with the screen to study, work, interact, have fun, entertain yourself. Then, We have this emerging trend of official desktop films I'm trying to investigate and describe, originally conceived as narrative outcomes, but still very similar to parallel online format or open to documentary variation. And finally, you have COVID-19, so that since March 2020, everybody has been more or less forced to embrace quite a lot of desktop activity, both transmitting and receiving data, with this being at the moment some sort of unavoidable choice, or life hack, if you will. By the way, all of these riddles and much more on November 3rd, next Tuesday, you're all invited to join my dedicated workshop. We will keep asking ourselves a lot of questions and possibly try to answer them by practicing the art and craft of desktop storytelling right on the spot. That's all, folks. Wow, it was a roller coaster.
I also felt like I got taken on a crazy roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
You mentioned the lockdown, and I was thinking about how, of course, during the lockdown, we've also had, for those of us who have the privilege of working from home and working mainly with our computers, we have had access into the private spaces of students, for example, or of our colleagues, but also the private spaces of, let's say, academics who have done Zoom calls from their house, and even celebrities who are sort of doing their late night shows at home. And I was thinking about this kind of access into the private space, and do you see the desktop documentary as also being accessed into the private space of the desktop? Because sometimes I see my desktop as a private space to me. And I was wondering if you see this kind of overlap there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the desktop is the ultimate private space. Nowadays with Zoom meetings, or I don't know, Brad Pitt and his friends rehearsing line of dialogue for screenplays on Zoom, we just see their faces. So let's suppose you think about, I don't know, an Hollywood celebrity. You can see that person, that icon in a film, or through gossip and, I don't know, telephoto lenses. You can see that through paparazzi point of view in his private life, and then he or she could be sharing some snapshot from his own cell phone, or just rehearsing some piece of screenplay in Zoom. So we're getting closer to his face, but what we want to see, maybe, I don't know, what I would like to see is Brad Pitt's desktop. That is what really interests me. So what about the desktop, or I don't know, just Angelina Jolie. We want to see that. I don't know if they have a desktop, or if there is something like a personal helper, or just I don't know, a spin doctor carrying their own desktop as well. Probably they have some personal devices, and it will be interesting to see how they arrange their folders. I mean, just emails from Steven Spielberg or Donald Trump. I don't know. It would be interesting. And the same goes for my friends as well. So I'm not necessarily, actually I'm more interested in my friend's desktop than in Brad Pitt's one. But if I had to choose, I would be interested to have a look, to just have a peek on celebrities' desktops as well. If they have a computer.
That would be the next version of the Cribs show, where you go into celebrities' houses, but then instead you tour celebrities' desktops and go into their files.
Yeah, you enter into their houses precisely to spy on their desktop. Just okay, now you sit there, and I'm focused on your computer.
I have a question from the chat from Marine. Do you see these desktop narratives screened in cinema, or do they belong to the private zone of watching at home on your own desktop?
This is also a very interesting question. So in terms of the short history of that particular genre, some of them have been released in festivals, and then they have been acquired by major distribution companies and resold and redistributed on cinema. But I think their specific place to be consumed is the computer, of course. But it's interesting, and I've been witnessing some of those screenings in theatrical setups. Nowadays, it's difficult. For example, here in Italy, where I'm talking from right now, they just close cinemas again. So I don't know what's going to happen in the near future. But some of those films, let's say out of 20 films that I was listing under the feature film, let's say, list, some of them, 5 to 8, have been distributed for a small period in regular cinemas. So it's interesting to see glitches and big pixels on big screen. But in the end, probably the best possible way to experience them, not talking about just looking at them or watching them, but experience them, is to have them in your computer, especially if they uncannily replicate your own desktop. Most of them are based on Apple, let's say, landscapes, but even if you're not an Apple user, I mean, you can have a real interesting experience witnessing something that is happening on your computer by sharing the same setup as the one from which you launched the video in the first place.
Yeah. Interesting. Do you have like a desktop documentary that you would recommend to people? Let's say people who have never watched one before. What's a good entry-level desktop documentary for someone to watch?
Yeah, well, once again, the terminology is slippery. So documentary, I mean, we are on the verge between video essay and let's say essay film. So just like there is a guy called Kevin Bealey that is making a lot of interesting video essay for Fender, and now he's starting to make some desktop documentaries. So we talk about film, but using his own desktop as, let's say, the overarching frame. Otherwise, if we talk about films, I would suggest Unfriended. Unfriended is probably the most popular one. It's a fiction film. It's a horror film, and it took it takes place mainly in Skype. And otherwise, recently, if you want to really be super contemporary, you can watch Host, which takes place on Zoom, and it talks about the spiritual seance, just like they're trying to evoke some spirits, and then in the end they will die one by one. So the Zoom session will end incrementally very quickly in 40 minutes because they don't have a appropriate pay for that.
Sounds great.
On Vimeo.
I'm looking forward to watching all of these. Thank you.
By the way, sorry, just
go ahead.
If you want to watch something made by me, you can go on my Vimeo and you will find a meta desktop documentary, because it's a small video essay on desktop horror film. It's called Desktop Horror. You will find that under my Vimeo page, Other Figurt, and it's both a video essay and a desktop documentary, and it talks about desktop horror films. That's it, just to combine all together. In the end, it makes a lot more confusion in your head.
Thank you so much. We have a link to your Vimeo actually on our website, but maybe Lillian will also be able to share it in the chat as well, so people can take a look at that. Thank you. It's great to have this talk as our roller coaster talk as our final talk for the evening.
Yes.
All right. Bye.